Hey, what's going on, everybody? Got a different setup here, but so we just finished up a online virtual classic raw deal tournament, and I am joined by a good friend of mine who I met coming back into this game and was just very welcoming and very open to the virtual classic, helping me get set up. Has definitely helped out with some of the decks that I play, and also came top 4 in the tournament. Mike, or no, you're not Mike. Damn it.
Not Mike.
You are Evan, and I know better. I've been talking to you and Mike a lot lately. Yeah, Evan came in top 4. I actually played him during Swiss. And to update from my last video, the Tajiri video, I ended up actually winning in a 3-hour-long game where we spent 2 hours not playing a card. I'll talk about that later. But so Evan, what was your experiences with the tournament? You've been in a lot more of these, obviously, than I have.
Yeah, I've been in all of the OCTGN tournaments that we've had so far. I won the first one with Pete Dunn. I don't even remember when that was. I think it was over the summer. And I've been in each of them. I've had pretty decent runs. So for this tournament in particular, it was kind of up and down. I was using some untested decks, which isn't always great to do in a tournament setting.
Yeah.
But
luckily it was a tournament that wasn't for anything. We didn't have to pay any entry, and it had a really interesting to more normal raw deal tournaments of we could switch decks every round.
Yeah.
And which, in a game that has a diversity rule going into Top Cut, that kind of, you can't really use that. But yeah, I think I played 5 different decks over the course of the tournament, maybe 6. Did you play every round?
I repeated one deck. I played Dean Malenko twice.
Okay. So
that was all unique.
And I still haven't seen that Dean Malenko deck, and you have showed me a little bit of it, and I'm like, okay.
One game went as planned, the other game did not go as planned.
And that was the top 4 game, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
Okay. So round 1, what did you end up going up against? What'd you end up playing?
Round 1, I played Keith. I was Jim Cornette with the Owen Hart Yokozuna Enforcer, and he was Ember Moon.
Okay. I've been looking at Ember a lot, and I know I've talked to you about it. So I'm really interested to see how that goes.
So I think what I'm about to tell you will tell you everything you need to know about Ember Moon.
Okay.
My Jim Cornette is Premier Raw, Hand Destruction, and also Brass Knucks Punches.
Okay.
I was able to make him discard his entire hand on the first turn of the game.
Okay.
He ended up winning 78 fortitude to my 19 fortitude.
Holy smokes.
He was his Ember Moon used There Is No Escape and Drawing a Blank, because there's a number of blank moves with There Is No Escape.
And she wants non-reversal restriction cards.
Right. Her effects interact with non-printed reversal restrictions, and her own effects make it so when she plays a move, randomly choose number of cards in your opponent's hand, and he can't play those cards, or your move can't be reversed by any of those cards based on the number of cards underneath her other specific.
And then when you're removing hybrid reversals from the equation, you're removing non-unique reversals from the equation through drawing a blank. Oh, well, I mean, that sounds nasty.
There was a time, and at one point he had so many cards underneath
it was just your whole hand
that I couldn't play. I wasn't allowed to play anything in my hand.
Geez.
And I already couldn't play min-match reversals because of There Is No Escape.
Yeah.
So I was just like, well, I guess I'll and the game took a while because all of my moves were chain. Mm-hmm. So he would reverse my chain moves. I would shuffle in 2 reversals with Calgary. He'd play a move. I couldn't play reversals. I'd reverse it. So the game was just it was inevitable that I was going to lose, but I wanted to make it as long as possible.
Because Eclipse is actually a really good finisher too.
Yeah.
Remember, it can't be reversed from Arsenal. If you have so many cards under Moonrise.
And he did.
Yeah. And that's just with her 4-card support now. I'm assuming she's going to get some more support going forward.
She will, yeah.
Yeah. So for my round 1, I ended up I played against one of the guys I play with here locally. It's like we get paired up. It's like, well, okay. So we were just messing around one of our Friday nights on Octagon, and we ended up playing. We both sent our decks to our third friend who was watching, and I decided to play Sting, No Escape, Hell in a Cell, and my other buddy decided to play John Cena Backlash Destruction. And I'm like, okay, I got stomped.
Yeah.
I had 1 fortitude.
Ooh.
Yeah, lost my entire Backlash deck on the first move because John Cena's support after San Diego plus Michelle McCool's, where he gets to search for the 1 card.
Yep.
That it basically makes, even if your opponent reverses the move, it counts it as successful for your ability.
All right, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm like, oh, okay, so I just don't have a Backlash deck now. And Sting doesn't have a super big hand size, so I'm going up against like 4 cards to his 13 the whole game.
And it's Hell in a Cell, so that's just another.
Yeah. So that game did not go well for me. But luckily had some better success going forward. Pat ended up actually going 5-0 in Swiss, and then lost to you in top 8.
Upset, the Cinderella story.
Yeah, last seed against first seed. But going into the next couple of rounds, and you mentioning, hand destruction, serious hand destruction, discard hands. I think on a little bit of a tangent here, a card that needs to be seeing more play, and we've actually started packing in more of our decks, evening up the odds.
I have gone on record saying that is my favorite card in Virtual.
Yeah.
I don't always pack it, but it is such a good card.
Yep, we've started packing it in a lot more of our decks. That in any deck that has a 5 hand size base, buying myself some time just goes in. It's just, those are such good counters to the hand destruction decks. And I will say that specifically as somebody who plays a very competent, a very potent hand destruction deck, because my second round opponent, granted the hand destruction didn't even come in. I feel bad because this wasn't even really a game. And it has nothing to do with my opponent. I think I played Badman, I think is what he goes by. He was playing Shayna Baszler NXT Takeover, so I don't get to use the hand destruction for my game deck. But the game was over on turn 2. I was even messaging you like as I was playing the game, like telling you how it was run. I'm like, all right, bring the hammer down, went through with him with 11 cards in hand. Didn't get reversed, so then I suicide striked. And then turn 2, I sledgehammer shotted, and game was over.
Yeah, that's all it takes sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes your opponent just draws a really bad hand, and Virtual has done a really good job of limiting those kind of games. But when you're throwing maneuvers that don't have basic reversal restrictions, that a lot of the reversals that stop it don't hit it, and then you only have 1 divine. So that was not a very good game.
Sometimes the hardest move to reverse
is a vanilla one.
Vanilla non-multi move with 3 lines of text or less.
We actually started. We were looking at packing the new Raw SmackDown Women belt, the Raw one specifically, and we're like, wait, what if we just don't pack this and make the card harder to reverse because it doesn't make it a multi? With the Raw Allegiance, it's already hard to reverse.
Yeah, that's multis they're as reversible as if they weren't multi.
Yep.
It takes 2, but sometimes it only takes 1.
Yep.
So.
And I say in every one of my deck videos is get the F out, and should be in 3 of in every deck. And once is enough's in face decks, and there's enough superstar specific cards now that say completely reverse a multi.
Yep.
But yeah, I could 100% agree that vanilla non-multi cards are sometimes harder to reverse than anything else.
But going back 1 second to evening up the odds.
Yeah.
What I hear against that card is that it lets my opponent draw. But more importantly, it keeps your opponent's hand at a manageable rate.
Yep.
It's not about how much he draws. It's about how little his hand is
It's making
allowed to
sure he
keep.
doesn't have 20 some cards in there.
Right. It's like even if you're Chris Jericho, like you could pack that card and it's like, all right, he has 6 cards in his hand. I'm gonna make him randomly discard at least one of them.
Yep.
So
yeah.
you know.
The other interesting thing about that card that I think people don't give enough credit to is shuffle mechanics.
Mm-hmm.
Shuffling mechanics are some of the most powerful mechanics in card games, at least some of the ones that I've played, especially if you're playing cards like Thrust Knee Lift. My buddy Pat just built a Jinder Mahal deck that literally just wants to spin Divine all the time. So it's get Divine back on the bottom, shuffle with evening up the odds.
Yep.
And it's such a powerful combination, especially because I think he mentioned he played against somebody in the tournament that played Aleister Black with evening up the odds, because his one pre-match is like whenever you have the same amount of cards, like you get to draw. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, that's really neat. And you can like stack it with the timing of the draw for evening up the odds. Yeah. I really like that idea.
When Aleister and his opponent have the same cards in their hand, Aleister draws one and the opponent discards one.
Yep. And then if you're still under 7, you get to draw again for evening up the odds. Yeah, it's just such a good card, and I think more people need to pack it.
And going back to Ember Moon, if Ember can control how many cards are in your hand, and she picks this many that you can't reverse it with,
yep.
I guess you're just not playing reversals that game.
Yeah, it's less about destroying your opponent's hand and more about just managing it.
100%. Yeah, like people will it's not always about what does it do for me. It's sometimes how does it hurt them.
Yep.
And sometimes people don't always see that.
Yeah, I agree. So how about your second round? Hopefully it was more of a game than mine.
Well, it was a little bit more of a game, but not much. I played a Lawnmower Man, who was the one who set up this tournament. I was Dean Malenko, and he was OG Hulk Hogan with all the new support.
Yeah. I like his new support.
His new support is very good, but Dean Malenko did not care.
Oh,
Dean Malenko, I ended up winning 41 fortitude to 7. But it was all one. Dean just had all the answers. He's Dean Malenko. He's really he's top tier in my book. His virtual 11 support is a lot. And my Dean Malenko is, I guess it's a backed by Vicky deck, but with Dean's support, if he plays it from ringside, it's also chain and it's also blank. So if I have lower fortitude, I'm throwing Vicky protected, chain, drawing a blank protected moves from ringside.
Yeah, that's strong.
Yeah, it's a lot. So yeah.
Just because now you got me looking at like the fortitude. I went back to look at the reports. My game 2 was 61 fortitude to 2 fortitude.
Yeah.
But so Dean Malenko has just seemed really strong. And I remember when I was looking at him, we were focusing more on like trying to make the ring psychologies work. But I think you should just be worried about killing people.
Yeah, the way I look at it, the ring psychologies are a bonus. You know, I don't lean into any of them. His specifics are sometimes considered back or leg or arm. And his Texas Cloverleafs are considered leg and back. So if I get any of those in my ring, then it'll help. He's also underrated as like a hand destruction deck, because he gets a free old school psychology. He gets WCW support, which lends itself to discarding. His moves from ringside are chain. So he's an underrated discard deck, and he can play pretty much any non-unique from ringside as if from hand, including shoot action, simply the best.
He's also the one that like all his WCW cards are minus fortitude, and then like the one card makes all his cards WCW cards.
all of his specifics are considered WCW. All of his WCW cards are -4 fortitude.
Yep.
And his superstar specific actions, I think, just cannot be reversed.
Yeah, that's a solid.
He has a lot, and he's real good, and I'm really proud about that.
Yeah, it sounds like it's really effective. I definitely want to play against it at some point. If not, I want to play it.
Yeah.
So third round, how'd your third round go?
Third round was probably overall my most fun game. I played Crasher. He was Adam Cole, and I was the Revival. I ended up winning that game, but it was a really good game. Revival also got they were terrible.
They were real bad for a bit, weren't they?
Well, they weren't terrible, but they were really bad. And then their support card, they got 2 support cards. They got a move and a backstage. The backstage, not to toot my own horn, it was mostly my design. It really made them playable. Like they are very good now. And Adam Cole, you play Undisputed Era a lot,
Yep.
so Adam Cole is a really good superstar.
Yeah.
And Crasher is an excellent player and deck builder.
Yep.
So it was just like a good, fun, there was no real like cheese going on in the game. It was
and you're both playtesters, so you both you're very familiar with each other.
Yeah, we're both playtesters and developers, so like we've played each other a number of times. I think I've played him in every tournament so far. We've gone back and forth winning. So one thing I do remember about this game is I was up probably like 25 fortitude to like 6, and he hit me with a undermine the competition on a blindside drop toe hold, so I had to drop down to 4 fortitude.
Yep.
So that was like a reset. Luckily,
that's the Crasher special, isn't it? The undermine the competition.
Yeah. Luckily, I was a blindside deck, so I could play a lot of those moves from ringside. So that helped a little bit, but for a while I was like, oh, I always walk into that card. What did I do?
That card can be such a blowout.
Yeah.
That can be a damning card for a lot of decks.
Yeah.
But
I always say I want to like put like a sticky note on the side of my computer saying like, watch out for undermine, just like lace my computer with sticky notes about certain players,
And then you'll still walk into it.
Of course. But yeah, that was a really good, fun game, and I ended up winning, which made it better.
Nice. And winning with a deck that, like, even though it got some support, like, that was relatively underrated as far as, like, if Revival was any good. That always feels pretty good. Yeah. So my round 3, I played the game again. Every round I went back and forth. I'm like, I don't know who to play because I like all of my decks, but I also
you'd always message me, who should I play?
And you're just like, play whoever you're comfortable with. I'm like, I'm comfortable with all of them.
Right. Yeah.
And it's like my thing is like, I've always been a very competent pilot as far as like I could pick up a deck and just play it and generally play it pretty well. But so I decided to go with the game, and as soon as I revealed my superstar, my opponent got a little upset because he even said, I just put out the video. He's like, I should have expected this and played someone else. I destroyed his hand. He was playing Lacey Evans. He didn't get to play the game with very many cards in his hand at all. He did manage to get some girly moves off. And I was down to, I think, like 17 or 18 cards. Granted, I still had probably 45 cards worth of recursion left in my deck. But yeah, the defining moment of that game, though, in my opinion, not even a defining moment, but like one thing that stood out is he threw a move. I reversed it, reversing going down to 4 cards in my hand and removing Lady from all of his maneuvers because I blanked his ability with Cerebral Assassin. But that was another game where for 4 turns, I was playing unique cards, trying to bait how to skirt the issue so I could end the game with a Sledgehammer Shot, because I'm like, Sledgehammer Shot is generally like my go-to finisher because I hate reversal spins.
Yeah. And
when I built the deck, my buddy was like, why are you running Sledgehammer Shot? It's bad. You're never going to work. You're never going to get to work. And I'm like, do you realize like it's 10 less fortitude and I remove the can only be played? Like, I'm playing the bad pre-match specifically for that reason.
Yep. And I watched that game, And I will say that had your opponent not played angry,
hmm
he would
It
have
would
had
have
a
been
chance.
absolutely 100%
It would have been a much more competitive game, but he was playing frustrated.
Yep.
And he wasn't ever out of it until the very end.
Absolutely.
But he was playing frustrated, so he was missing easy
There were
things.
some. I know the one is like he could have played the Revolutionizing the Division on, or not, the Women's Evolution. Is that the Backlash one?
Yeah.
When
Yeah.
I played the game Sleeper, he
Yep.
instead reversed my maintain hold. When he could have reversed the game Sleeper. But yeah, there were definitely like some minor, both build mistakes and play mistakes that definitely could have been avoided. And hopefully, like with the discussions we had after the game, he was able to kind of take some of that and positively, as positively as I tried to mean it.
Yeah.
Because I never want anybody to feel bad playing against me, and if I can help them shore up the rest of their games, that's generally what I try to do.
Yep.
Even as like new coming back to the game as I am. Yeah,
Good
that was
advice is good advice.
that was a 79-9 fortitude was that game. And I think that's the end of my blowout game. Nope, I forgot. My 5th round against Crasher was a blowout. So I'll take round 4 as soon as I find it again. Who did I play round 4?
That
Oh, I
was
played
me.
you round 4.
You sure
That was a
did.
great game. I decided to bring out my Tajiri deck. We went in with a gentleman's agreement into round 4. We weren't going to play any cheese decks. No NWO poison. No, there is no escape, and
Right.
no hand destruction. No pre-match hand
Yep.
destruction.
Right.
So we gave a list of 5 or 6 superstars, and we rolled a d6 to see what would happen. You rolled Nia Jax, and I rolled Tajiri. And the Tajiri, I just put the video up, which has gotten a lot of success. People are really liking it, and I love playing that deck. It was a good back and forth, just me playing chops, getting fortitude, and then just being able to kind of reverse the multis that I could with Tajiri's hybrid reversals, and you maneuvering around them with shoot lockups. And then I walked into a shoot counter and the Tamina card because I'm an idiot.
Right.
And because I didn't know that card existed.
Yeah. It's a good that back by Tamina or Tamina interferes or whatever it is that's a hell of a reversal. It's basically Cowboy Bob Orton, but with more oomph.
Yeah.
I remember I didn't have a particularly great opening hand that game.
Yep. I vaguely remember that as well.
That hurt. So I had to kind of play catch up a little bit. And you can't really play catch up against Tajiri because he has access to so many great reversals.
Yeah.
So it was definitely an uphill climb for me.
You did shut off like 2 of my pre-match cards just by playing Takeover. I couldn't play Summer of Slam or Fans of an Underdog Throwback.
And I don't think you had much of anything to get rid of for Kyodai, right?
Nope.
You got rid of something, but it wasn't.
I got rid of your product endorsements. I got rid of your belt because you play a belt in her.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was just throw moves and reverse them, like just trying to land double chops for me, and you trying to land some big multis,
big meaty bash moves.
Which I walked into the shoot counter because I'm not used to just running shoot lockup shoot counter combos.
Yeah,
I'm just not used to that.
any deck that I build that has a shoot card in it, I just throw shoot counter in the backlash because it's a hell of a reversal. It's a game ender. So
I've considered putting it in my Undisputed Era deck since I added the shoot lockups.
Yeah, it's better than most reversals you can put in your backlash. So
yeah,
I remember I had a misplay where I could have played Naya's elbow drop at one point, and
you revealed it, I think, instead.
Yeah, I revealed it to shuffle it in because I didn't remember that it could be played as a counter. But and it was at a point in the game where it was kind of anyone's game, like near the end. I mean, you could have sustained all of it and still probably won the game, but it was just a misplay on my end.
That game was close too. It was 30 fortitude for you to 28 fortitude for me, winning with a double chop. His new support, the support that he got for virtual is so good.
Yeah. he's
Just the
he's
double
good.
chops not being able to be reversed by hybrid reversals, and then the under 10 fortitude, where you can kind of manipulate your ring with double face kick specifically. Oh, so good.
Yeah.
So whoever designed those cards, well done.
That was before I was on the team, so
that was V1, yeah. So going into our last round, how did your last round
go? Last round was totally one-sided. I was Carlito and Primo Cologne, and I went up against Matt Hardy, Not Die, and he was Dolph Ziggler. And I think Dolph Ziggler is really good in this game, but the Colognes just had their way with him. I think it was a foreign object Dolph Ziggler that he was running. With First Blood match. So I was like, oh man, what am I walking into here? But he basically was just kind of throwing unprotected, foreign objects, and the Colognes have pretty insane draw power now. So I was just able to I was not met with any resistance hardly at all. So I just played moves and I ended up beating him with a trademark finisher.
Yeah.
Pretty boring game, one-sided, 67 fortitude, the 2 fortitude.
How does your Cologne deck run? Like, cause my buddy that I play with here was trying to make them work, and he just never could really kind of get them to click.
I always start off with face stretch because they're guaranteed a move. If their move is reversed, they overturn cards equal to the damage plus 5. So when I have 0 fortitude, face stretch is 0 damage.
Yep.
So I just overturn 5 and I have a free 8 fortitude in my ring. And then it's basic backed by Vicky after that.
Okay. Yeah, he was trying to run it as a punch deck, I remember.
Yeah. I mean, I can see that with Brass Knucks.
Yep.
They can get Brass Knucks for free. It costs them 10 card overturn, but Brass Knucks is a very powerful card when it's in your ring, so that's valid. And they have really good discard power because of their spirited opponents being superstar specific and all that.
And then I still think the Apple is probably one of the stronger backstage cards.
Yeah. It's one of the earliest ones too from the days of Classic. It's really good. It's a free get rid of that card out of your opponent's hand that your opponent can't
interact with. Yeah.
Right. They can't do anything about it. So I usually if I don't have a face stretch in my opening hand, I'll use the Apple to get rid of like a don't try. And then I'll ace their pre-match that lets me search for a move.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, so, that's a good idea.
It's a pretty consistent strategy.
Okay. My fifth round, I played against Crasher, who was also playing Dolph Ziggler. I was playing the Vaudevillains, and I think you watched a little bit of this game.
Yeah.
The V11 Vaudevillain support is gross. Specifically the backstage card that says when your maneuver is unsuccessful, your opponent randomly bottom decks a card too if you have less fortitude, is just absurd. And they get to pack 2 of all the good classic maneuvers, and they make them better. Like, yeah, he was playing a dynamic Dolph Ziggler deck, which I thought was really neat because he was playing the on one arena, so he's playing like some of the 1 cards. And he's playing what's the hold on 1 second, the action multi that can only be reversed by 1 card.
Take 1 second.
Right. He plays it with Abraham Washington show and making it heal through #heal. So it can only be reversed by 1 card, but you can't completely reverse it.
Yep.
I was like, I'm trying to he played that and I backed by blue pants. No, I didn't. I used black. I remember we were talking about it with my friends and I, that grab the mic with Abraham Washington show is an incredibly powerful combo that gets used a lot. So I'm like, I want to back by blue pants, grab the mic. And back by blue pants is basically an oversell or like a hulking up style card for actions. So he's like, I'm like, it's successful, throw this in, and now because I play it face, all of your interfere cards are plus 15 fortitude. And then I was just laying into him with stripping his hand down as he was reversing my classic maneuvers, and eventually got to the point where I hit a classic gorilla press slam, removing 2 cards from his ring, getting rid of sustained and his banned from ringside. So I kind of took away any like comeback potential that he had.
Yeah.
And ended it with the trademark finisher with the Whirling Dervish.
Yeah.
98-11.
Yeah, the vaudevillain support is a little silly. But they'll probably not get supported
Any more support ever.
So it's their Ultimo Rashazo,
Yeah.
It's their going away card that we sometimes give.
Yeah. And like I said, that support ended up becoming very, very good. Especially the being able to ringside search a classic maneuver by revealing a classic maneuver. And they have a lot of staying power through old school antics. They get to double their old school antics when they're lower. And
they can't be reversed at some point.
Yeah, when you have lower fortitude, they can't be reversed, and you double the numbers. And then their one card puts any number of old school antics from your ringside back into your ring.
Mm-hmm.
It's really strong. Yeah, that was not the best game for Crasher. I know he was even like, I just threw this deck together and I was trying it out. Dynamic probably still needs some help. I think Dynamic might be one of the weaker archetypes still. Outside of like the deck we're going to talk about in your top 8 game, because that's just silly.
I've found myself making more and more dynamic decks. It's really all about Matt Stryker.
Yeah.
At a certain point you can get a free 9 fortitude.
Yep.
But they're still vanilla depending on who your superstar is.
Find out how Fight from Finley helps out a bit when you're able to change the maneuver types.
I don't even find myself packing it that much, to be honest. It's good if you kind of for like your freaking hero who has access to your opponent's hand.
Mm-hmm.
If they have step aside in their hand and you make it a grapple, they can't use that step aside. But for a regular deck,
it's less viable. Yeah.
It's okay. It's fine.
So what keeps bringing you back to like Dynamic?
I mean, again, it usually depends on the superstar. You saw me play a game recently as Big Freaking Machine, which was a dynamic deck, and
deck is silly.
The basic idea is to get May 19th in my ring as early as possible. So I use 3 I'm always on top plus dynamically inclined to make my dynamic moves minus 12 fortitude. So my first card played is always Dynamic Lariat, which is 12 fortitude, 15 damage.
Protected by Big Freaking Machine.
Protected by Big Freaking Machine's ability. So either my opponent is going to use Reach Exceeds Your Grasp, and then I get May 19th in my ring, or they eat 15, they give me 15 fortitude, and I'm set for the rest of the game.
Yeah, or they douchebag it, and then you still get May 19th.
They can't douchebag his ability.
Oh, really? Does it say from a card effect?
It does.
Oh, then yeah, just can only reach it, and then you get May 19th, and then you're basically going to stop whatever they throw because you have 5 fortitude.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
And Kane has a really good suite of reversals, so he can hit pretty much anything, at 5 fortitude or close to it.
Yep. And then it's coming down next turn.
A lot of it depends on the superstar I'm building, and I was like, oh, they could work dynamic. Something interacts well.
Yeah, I think the only dynamic deck that I currently have built is the one that I think you sent me and then I modified, was the Adam Cole deck.
Right.
And I like that. I like that deck less for the dynamics and more for the NXT stuff. And I think Cole's Super Kick is an absurdly good card.
Well, you bring up the NXT stuff. Another reason for my kind of resurgence into dynamic is they're all high damage.
Yep.
So they interact with Mauro Ranallo
very
well. Whenever you successfully play a move, you shuffle into a promo too.
Yep.
So
no, I definitely see that. Yeah, as long as you can get on the board, and with match strikers, you generally shouldn't be kept off too difficult.
And some people, you know, if you get 9 fortitude, they're fine for the rest of the game.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, it might take a couple turns, but you'll get there.
All right.
Speaking of dynamic.
Yeah. So going into top 8, it was Evan as last seed versus my buddy Pat first seed. He went 5-0. He was feeling pretty good. Did not have any idea what Evan was going to play. And I watched that game, and we have talked about it a lot since. We were not ready for that deck.
Yeah, I was Vicky Guerrero, and he was Rowdy Piper.
Yep.
Back to basics, which very good deck. I saw him actually play that deck
against Mitch.
Yeah.
Because he sleeper matched Mitch, and Mitch was not happy about that.
So when I saw him put down Rowdy Piper, I was like, oh, okay, this will be interesting. And you know, I didn't, you know, I had this Vicky deck built that I hadn't really tested that much. But man, her support really made her silly.
Yeah. And the Piper deck, like, the three of us are like, that's probably one of the stronger decks that we have built. And you kept him off the board. Like, we actually think that the only reason he got fortitude was either through reversals or you let a maneuver be successful. You didn't have to let it be successful.
Yeah, I certainly could have reversed. I don't remember exactly what he played, but I could have reversed it, but I knew that if I let this move go through, then
you can reverse the follow-up.
Right. Like, I won't have to worry about the heavyweight belt protection after this move. So I ended up, it was like a puncher belly.
So it was a back to basic move.
It was, you know, something insignificant. So I was like, all right, I could reverse it, but I think in the long run it'll be better if I let it go, which ended up, I guess, was the right choice.
Yeah.
And Vicky, my Vicky is so Vicky's new support, part of it lets her overturn 3, and then her next move played is considered SmackDown.
So it's protected by Vicky.
Right, and she can pack back by Vicky now. So and it has to be a move without a printed reversal restriction. None of the dynamic moves have a printed reversal restriction.
They sure don't.
So I was playing Vicky protected dynamic moves. And he was a Revo of the Mind deck.
Yep.
Which Vicky hurts them more than, you know,
the counter reversals.
Like, if he was legendary defense, it probably would have been a lot harder for me to hit a move. But he was a Revo of the Mind deck, so it ended up working out very well for me. And Vicky she basically has guaranteed fortitude with her new support.
Yeah, the fact that you get 6, this is just the beginnings, that you can jump in to turn a maneuver into a non-maneuver. And not only do they give the 1 fortitude for being in your ring, they give you an additional 1 fortitude because it's a non-pre-match SmackDown card.
Yep.
Like, that's just so strong. And then you're running like rules so that you can reverse any maneuver you want when you do that.
And that was something I accidentally discovered. Because I put rules are meant to be broken in a lot of my dynamic decks because I'll always have a move and an action in my hand. So I just like slotted it in, and then I thought, like, oh, her backstage turns his move into an action. So if I put this is just a beginning in my ring, I can discard for rules are meant to be broken to reverse any move.
Yep.
So I'm better than Goldberg. Like,
yeah.
So that was something I just kind of like backed into.
And we saw that, we're like, oh, that's we didn't really know how to deal with that.
How can you? Like, there's not like I mean, I guess like a serious hand destruction deck could probably, like, you're the game deck could probably handle her, but you know, she also has a lot of discard power, or you know, my
especially because she gets to play actions on your opponent's turn, which is a really interesting mechanic. And so it's a chain spitted opponent. It's like you're discarding something some way.
Yeah, it's guaranteed discarding. Yeah, I was a little surprised by that game. I wasn't expecting. I guess I didn't realize how powerful she was.
Yeah, and she definitely is. Just even if you took like one part of her new support,
Yeah.
she'd still be really good. Like just making all of your maneuvers protected by Vicky, or making all of your opponent's maneuvers actions. Just one of those would be super good. But
Yeah.
then you combine it with all of that on top of her one pre-match that we were talking about before we started recording, was making your reversals chain.
Your cards played on your opponent's turn are chain,
Yeah.
including reversals.
Yep.
And I use the your freaking hero enforcer.
Yep.
So whenever I successfully play a chain card, I draw one.
Yeah.
So
So
I
it
draw
turns your
one.
managers into draw two,
Right.
Revos into draw two. Yeah, that's just super strong.
Yeah. It's and that's all she had prior to Virtual 11. All she had was your freaking hero enforcer and draw one for reversals. But now she has
Yeah.
unlimited potential. And again, like Vaudevillains, I doubt she'll ever get more support
Yep.
ever again.
So
And
that's
she
her
doesn't
going
need it.
away. Yeah,
She
she
doesn't need
definitely
it.
doesn't.
She's real good.
Yeah. So that's her going away present. But yeah, it was a longer game, but that was definitely a game that like Pat even said, he's like, I didn't know what to do. And I'm pretty sure like I had no way to win that game. Really
Yeah.
the only like we figured the only throw maneuvers deck that could really like handle it is if you're throwing a lot of RMS maneuvers
Mm-hmm.
where you can't
Yeah.
turn them into actions. And then we talked about if I had to play against it, I would play Undisputed Era because of opening volley.
Oh yeah.
Volley maneuvers couldn't be reversed from ring as long as I'm under 10. And that
And uh with the volley trait, I wouldn't be able to play actions.
yep,
And she's a heavy action deck.
yep.
So
And then my Undisputed Era deck can actually get a lot of fortitude just from reversals
mhm.
and from spinning them. So I can get up to where I can then play the game.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Big props on to you on that deck. That deck is super solid.
Yeah. And obviously I'm a playtester, but I hadn't playtested her support. So it was my first time really building
Venturing into it.
her stuff. Yeah.
You did a really good job with it. I will say that.
I'm happy. And I ended up, I mean, I feel bad, but I ended up winning with Mania.
Oh,
The
that was the other thing that we were talking about, is the fact that she has the one reversal that makes your first
right.
action unrespondable and can hit and it can hit win condition cards.
That's not what happened in this game,
It's
but it
not.
is possible.
Yeah, we were like, usually those cards that say that, they say like they can't have win the game in the title.
Yeah. I had Mania in my hand for a few turns, but I didn't know what was in his hand.
Mm-hmm.
So he ended up playing something, and I hit Master Manipulator, which let me look at his hand.
Yep.
And he didn't have any valid reversal. So my next turn, I was like, YOLO,
Mania. Yeah.
Mania, and it went through. And he had like 8 cards left, so I
You
feel
were
like I
probably gonna pinfall anyway.
yeah. And
Yeah.
when you're in top 8, pin or count out doesn't really matter. So
As shown by my 2 wins in Top Cut of being count out wins.
right, who was your round one
So
in
my
top
top
8?
8, I played against Keith. Was a great back and forth game. I think he was playing the Showstopper, so the Shawn Michaels Legend remake, and I was playing Kevin Owens, which
Those are 2 very good decks or superstars.
yeah, he let me shenanigans him during the pre-match,
Mhm.
so I got to take the first 2 turns of the game. So, but he went and searched for douchebag off of Icon for my pump kick, and he also had he got enough fortitude to Carlito elbow my flawless quick snap.
Mhm.
What that ended up doing though is put him at 6 fortitude. My last card underneath Fight Owens Fight is Shoot Lockup, and he's a legend.
Oh
So I
yeah.
get it at 0.
Yep. You sure do.
So I revo his next maneuver because he's playing Major Announcement with
Mhm.
and the crowd and the crowd goes wild. So if he has lower fortitude, you can't reverse the ace on major announcement.
Yep.
And when it's reversed, it goes to the bottom. So he always has a maneuver to throw. And he has, because he's the showstopper, he's got the Legend Lives On, which makes his maneuvers played from hand chain. But the questionable decision that I figured out was he was also running evening up the odds. So he's playing a heavy discard. Like his evening up the odds was actually helping me more than anything, because I was able to discard 2, reverse, draw 2.
Yeah.
And my Kevin Owens deck can actually support playing under 7 cards. And I would go up over 8, go back down under 7 to reverse his maneuver. He did not get a single maneuver through until like the last 2 turns of the game, and I ran out of reversals. I ran out of reversals.
Yeah.
But I hit the shoot lockup. Went into his turn. He played a maneuver. I reversed it. I went into Kevin's Cannonball, because that can be played as a counter, and that card's really good. And as the game was going on, he's playing WrestleMania because he gets to get it for free. And I'm like, I am not dealing with WrestleMania bullshit. WrestleMania is such a powerful card.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I have to find a way to count him out. And for 4 turns, I drew Making a Mockery of the Competition, which is Kevin Owens' action. And I've even considered cutting it from my deck because it never gets used, but it can't be responded to. And it basically becomes a copy of an opponent's superstar specific action in their ringside. And Shawn Michaels has an action that your opponent mills equal to their superstar value plus actions and maneuvers in their deck, in their ring. He was a 7 superstar value. And by the time I was able to play, I'd been setting it up for turns. I'm like, okay, I'm just going to keep him off the board. I'm going to play Making a Mockery. I'm going to mill him for 7, and I'm going to take him out.
And he already has Douchebag and Carlito in his ring, so he can't use the overturn reverse.
And I'd already burned through his Divine as well. He managed to get an action and maneuver into his ring, and I'm like, no, all this wick. I play NXT Generation. Can't be reversed from hand. He could have restricted and double sloppied it. He didn't. He bottom decks 2 cards from the effect because he's a legend.
Oh.
And I went with Making a Mockery for mill 9. I'm like, I will take the count out because I am not dealing with Mania.
That's awesome.
Yeah, Kevin Owens is, even after the change, like the errata nerf, he's still so good.
Yeah, he's still upper tier in my book.
I personally believe controlling the pace of the match is one of the best superstar specific cards in the game.
Yeah. His ability, his support.
Yep.
Like he can be built in any way and win a lot.
Yep.
He can be chain, he can be bash, he can be volley, he can be major announcement. Yeah. He can be anything and be competitive.
Yeah, his maneuver is, or his ability is strong enough and generic enough to really work with anything.
Yeah.
And I play him with McMahonism. Anybody who hasn't watched the video, because McMahonism, when you draw outside of your draw segment, you get to basically, using a magic term, you get to scry and basically cherry pick what you want to draw. And that's just, for him, that was like an immediate thought for me. It was like, I'm going to play this. And yeah. And just the fact that, like I've said it before, I'm like, I want to live the dream one time with the deck of getting the 3-turn start where you beat your opponent on superstar value. They open up shenanigans, and then you have control of the pace of the match. And I don't care who you are. Like, if you don't get 3 turns, you are way behind.
Well, we'll talk about my next round matchup in a minute.
Yeah. So that ended up being a 39-16 count out with the Making the Mockery of the competition. First, honestly, probably the second time I've ever played that card, and it won me that game. So
Showstopper, by the way, very good back to basics deck.
Oh, because it makes all the back to basics maneuvers chain.
And you have 3 old school Sykes in your ring.
And I think does it make your maneuvers in your ringside heat?
Yep.
So you could play the back to basic maneuvers if they get reversed anyway.
I mean, you would need other heat cards in your ringside, but yeah.
Sure. I like that.
Yeah.
So you played against Debu Raito in top 4, huh?
Yep, sure did.
Kairi Sane, huh?
Yep. Yeah, that was, and I feel bad because, she was originally my design. And she didn't play test very well.
Yeah, I think that's what Mike said too. He's like, she did not do well in testing.
She didn't. I think I was too focused on the spyglass and the treasure chest that her ability was just kind of a bonus. But
when her ability is the broken part about it.
Right. So I said, I played debut in the last tournament, in the finals of the last tournament, where he rated RKO'd me, which
that's who the rated RKO player was.
So anyone who's played against rated RKO knows at a certain point you just stop playing cards against them because you're not allowed to have a turn anymore.
Yep.
So I was like, all right, he's a player that knows how to win games. He's a smart player. He knows what to do, and I said, I'm gonna use a deck that might be my most powerful deck. So I used Malenko again. And I feel like against anyone other than Kyrie, I would have, based on what was in my hand and the setup, I would have had a regular Malenko wins game. But he to his credit, he didn't do anything particularly amazing. It was just Kyrie saying can continue her turn. And
the fact that she can continue her turn off of overturn reversals, which opens up a lot of high risk options and a lot of like that can only be played after X damage maneuver.
Yeah. And that was the idea. That was my original idea, was if her move is reversed overturning, continue your turn, high risk. Which sounds harmless enough, but
now you can play, here's a maneuver, overturn on reversal, use my ability, roll up or victory roll.
Yeah. His deck was mainly tech dropkick.
Okay.
And he had back body drop throwback, so he could pick him up from his ringside. It was a well put together deck. But I played I think I played like Revo of the Mind to his first move. He continued his turn. I should have played the Horseman mid-match reversal
to just end the turn without reversing.
Just end the turn. I ended up playing that in the same turn, but later. I should have just started with that. But it was just, there wasn't much I could do. On my first turn, I played Technical Superiority, the Malenko mid-match. And he used restricted use and then volley this and the women's evolution. So it was reversed. And then he had another, he continued his turn 3 times on his next turn. I got a turn and I went to play German suplex and he had Carlito in his hand. So, and that was my last turn. On the next turn, he hit 2 blindside tornado strikes and then victory roll. And that was it.
So we were talking, I think you and I have talked about it, and I definitely talked about it with Pat. I think she definitely needs to go to it. Probably she has to remove 2 backlash cards to continue the turn. Like one is definitely not enough of a cost.
I will break news. She will be getting a revision.
Okay.
We're working on it, but we think we have it.
Okay. Awesome.
Because if something's busted, we try to fix it. We don't. This isn't classic raw deal where we make busted cards to sell a product. We don't sell product. We just want a fair competitive game. And she will be getting a looking at. She has gotten a looking at, and we think we know what we're going to do. So,
and that's always been like my driving force on the now 2 tangents that I've done on classic versus virtual is you guys put so much time and energy into this game just to make sure that the players have fun. It's not to sell product. It's not to push a superstar or push an agenda. It's to make sure that the players get to enjoy the game. And when you have mechanics like that, where your opponent doesn't get to play the game, it's honestly like I've considered like asking like, has there ever been a thought of like shenanigans in cards like Never Gonna Stop Me? And it's all about control and cards like that, where it's like they basically lock your opponent out of the game at that point.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm all for it, but you know,
Yeah.
it's more than just me on the dev team. So
Yep. But so I'll say it again, as I said in the last couple of videos. If anybody who is watching this for classic raw deal purists probably won't be watching this, but give Virtual Classic a real shot, a fair shot. I think you even said you haven't met anybody that's given it a real shot that said no.
Yeah, no one that has honestly given Virtual a shot has gone back to just playing Classic.
Yeah, I don't think I ever could.
Yeah, the only Classic I could play now was like a sealed tournament. You know, like here's a sealed deck and some booster packs. Build a deck. You know.
Yeah, and it costs $300. So my top 4 game was luckily a little bit better than yours, it sounds. I played against Mike. I made a joke that I had to play all the playtesters in this tournament.
Pretty much.
And he went with Shayna Baszler. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna go with Undisputed Era. I haven't gotten to play them yet this tournament. I think it's a really good deck. I'm worried, you know, if I end up getting put in an old school cage match, stipulation comes around, he drops old school cage match. I'm like, oh no. Because my Undisputed Era deck does a lot with like thrust knee lifts, kidney punches, and I'm like, oh, I don't have that anymore. Yeah. But luckily, I think if it was any other superstar, this isn't against Mike or the build at all. If it was any other superstar, I would have had a much harder time. But the fact that it's drawing a blank Shayna, I knew I could go right into Adam Cole and basically have that protection for the rest of the game, and then get Kyle out and still have my recursion engine. It also probably didn't help that he reversed Beat You Raw twice.
Oh yeah.
Beat You Raw throwback, which when it's reversed, they have to mill equal to the number of raw cards. Max 5, I play 5. He reversed it twice because he didn't want me to get the fortitude, and then eventually he just let it go through.
Yep.
And I got to a point in the game where I'm just like, I saw that he played Power Slam throwback. I'm like, I don't throw a strike for the rest of the game because I will die because he plays Frankie.
Yep.
So I was just like, if I couldn't play a maneuver, I would just pass. I made one mistake, I believe. He played a submission. I thought I had enough fortitude with the North American Championship to fishhook the submission. I was 1 fortitude short. And I'm like, well, you're never going to throw a submission for the rest of the game, are you? He's like, sure aren't.
Yeah.
But I got him down to, he had 0 cards in his deck, and respect to Mike, he played a hell of a game. And he's like, I'm not gonna try to drag this out, and I'm not gonna take the easy way out. He's like, either throw a maneuver and it gets reversed, or I try to play Here Comes the Cavalry. He plays Here Comes the Cavalry. I use our era, and I have a Don't Try for his sustained. And yeah, it ended with a 42 fortitude to 36 pinfall. I made one questionable decision of he played a blindside, protected by drawing a blank, blatant chokehold for like 16. I reversed it once, and he played it again, and I just let it be successful. I could have reversed it again, but I'm like, I'm eventually going to run out of reversals to unique cards.
Yeah.
And if I just let it hit, I go back under his fortitude. It opens me back up to shoot lockup again, and for my North American Championship. And I'm just okay with him getting fortitude at that point because he already had enough to do whatever he needed to do.
Yeah.
Sometimes in virtual, like just letting the maneuver be successful is okay.
And that, I'm glad you brought that up, because that's something we kind of started to look at more, like puncher's chance. Sometimes letting a vanilla punch go through is better than reversing and overturning 3 every time.
Yep.
You have the occasional like gut punch where if you don't reverse it, your ring gets destroyed.
Yeah.
But, you know, if they're throwing, you know, roundhouse punch, maybe you just let it go through.
Yep. You eventually like we definitely like, and this I think stems from classic of reverse everything that you can, don't let your opponent get on the board. I just don't think that's really as possible as it used to be.
Yep.
There's just too many cards that are either have reversal restrictions or, you know, multis where even if you don't have to get the F outs, it's like taking 2 reversals to deal with it.
Yeah.
You will eventually just run yourself out of resources. And if you run out of resources and you can't close the game out, you're going to watch the game slip away.
Someone on the Discord a couple weeks ago was, you know, it was in the rants complete butt hurt section, and I think I think it might have been about puncher's chance and how like my opponent didn't play a successful move and pinned me. And, you know, I think I said, you know, you can't play virtual raw deal with a fully loaded mindset.
Yep.
Sometimes you just have to let the move go through and play from behind.
Yep. And I like that there's enough mechanics now that playing from behind is not only doable, is an actual strategy.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, a lot of support in the last couple sets have been when your move is unsuccessful or when you have lower fortitude. And some people don't like playing from behind. They say, I reverse everything, I'm ahead in fortitude, so I can play my big cards.
Yep.
And then the other person's like, all right, well, I'm gonna recycle my reversals into my deck, reverse everything overturning. When you run out, then I'll start playing everything.
Yep. And that's what some of my decks do. Like that's definitely what the Undisputed Era deck tries to do, is just you can just hit me. I'm just gonna spin reversals while I continue to attempt to progress my game plan.
And, you know, don't get me wrong, I play mostly probably throw moves decks in general. But I try to build decks that have a way to win regardless of the situation.
Yep. If you're playing a throw maneuvers deck and you don't have a way to kill a sponge deck, you should reevaluate at least some of the card choices and make sure that you can.
Yeah.
Man, speaking of no way to kill your opponent.
All right, well, I'm gonna go do something for half an hour while you talk about this game.
So in the finals, I went back to Undisputed Era. I had some conversations with you, with Mike. I didn't know, I played against Rhino. I didn't know anything about him. I looked back at some of the lists decks that he had played, and Kyrie was in the front of my mind. I'm like, I don't know what I do against this deck other than try to weather the storm. And my Undisputed Era deck runs Get Back in the Ring as a reversal. So I'm like, if I can get that in my ring and at least turn off the win condition cards, I can try to fight back once I've weathered through all of the turn continuations. He ended up going with King of Kings, which I had looked at a little bit, but I didn't know, I wasn't super familiar with what he did, but he seemed straightforward enough, where he gets the mill 3, shuffle a card, and then search for a Triple H specific maneuver. And then he has the one card that changes what his ability gets to do.
And he got a new virtual 11 support that did make him a lot better than he was.
Yeah, it's like your Triple H specific cards give +2 fortitude. When you play one and it's unsuccessful, your opponent randomly discards a card and you put it to the bottom. If it's successful, you get to drop the one card. That card's really strong.
Yeah.
But so he plays Baghdad, which Baghdad is a, I think, highly underplayed and undervalued venue.
Definitely.
Where so we go through and Baghdad ends up coming into play much later into the game. We play the game. Later. Yeah, we play the game normally for about 25 minutes to a half an hour. He gets some fortitude because of the +2 fortitude from the Triple H card that he played. Because he did a cute little trick that I really like. He plays Distractingly Divalicious, and then on his turn, he makes your escape Distractingly Divalicious out of his ring.
Classic.
I hadn't thought of that. I'm like, that's brilliant. And then because he has the 2 fortitude from Baghdad, he plays into I Am the Game. So he
I have that Divalicious making your escape in my D Malenko deck. but he was Kairi Sane, so I couldn't play Divalicious.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, enough about me.
But that's a really cute combo that I had never seen before. And so, you know, he makes me discard 2. I'm kind of okay with it. My Undisputed Era deck starts with a generally fairly large hand. And he makes his maneuver +3 damage, +1 because he runs the Classy Freddy Blassie pre-match, jumps in a belt, so he jumps in the hardcore belt that adds +1 damage and -2 fortitude.
Yep.
Brings it exactly to 10 damage, and I discarded or overturned Breaking Ground like real early. So I'm like, okay, well, I'll get 2. And it was what did he play? It was a reversal restriction card. I can't remember exactly what it was, but I spun Douchebag on the overturn. So I get 4 fortitude off of that. And because of the +2, I could still shoot lockup at 4 because he is also a legend. And we played like an actual normal game of Raw Deal, I'm going to say, where we went back and forth a bit, getting fortitude. And then it eventually got to the point where neither of us really playing a card was bad for either of us.
Man.
Which honestly, like, hurt me as a player to just my turn. Eventually, for a while, we just passed Baghdad back and forth. But the way that the backlash numbers worked out, I was going to get stuck with it in my ring. But he had no way to kill me with it. Because my Undisputed Era deck, because I'm not trapped in the old school cage match, I will be honest, I got pen and paper and I started tracking where all my thrust knee lifts were.
Hey.
And I kept them clumped together. I kept all 3 of them together. Kyle O'Reilly's ability, I got, 2 went into my ringside pile, the other 1 went in my hand. Or I would draw the 1, use my ability, get the 3rd card, the 2 would go in the ringside, put them all to the bottom. With my kidney punches that I would then keep all 4 of my superstar specifics together, and then kidney punch them to the bottom because of Boom, which I hadn't remembered who did it because somebody gave me that idea with kidney punch Boom. It was actually Debu.
Oh, really?
He had been the one that gave me the idea. And yeah, eventually just like I had more cards in my deck that the draw go game, I was never going to lose to it. Like I eventually got him to the point where he had to throw a card. He played Triple H's Reverse Neckbreaker, and he had 0 cards left in his deck. And we had a break for about 20 minutes while we discussed the rules, trying to get a ruling at 2:30 in the morning Eastern time about the timing breakdown.
You had sent me a message that I saw when I woke up. It was at 3 a.m. I was like, what happened? I didn't even know you guys were playing.
Yeah, so the timing breakdown, as we were looking it over, I think is very unclear about how reversals resolve. Because when you play a reversal, it creates its own timing breakdown.
Yeah.
But apparently its timing breakdown doesn't interrupt the original timing breakdown like I thought it should. So the maneuver can be considered unsuccessful before the reversal resolves.
Yeah.
So his King of Kings card triggered to put the Triple H Reverse Neckbreaker to the bottom, and made me randomly discard a card. Now here's the kicker. In my hand, I had 2 don't tries in my hand. 1 for the sustained and 1 for the through all these years when our era at his Triple H's Reverse Neckbreaker. I had 24 cards in my hand. Randomly discard 1 of the don't tries.
Of course.
So it prolonged the game another like half hour. Because I wasn't going to don't try the sustained and let him pop through all these years.
Yeah.
Get Out of Here could have reversed any card that wasn't a trademark finisher. Because we both had thrust knee lifts, and there was probably 30 plus cards removed on both sides. The only cards in my ringside were the ones that I could put back before he could interact with them. And then, yeah, eventually he just got to 0. He got a couple more cards back through his thrust knee lifts, through the Triple H's Reverse Neckbreaker again. I'm like, I'm just letting it be successful. I ain't dealing with this anymore because I don't think he can throw another maneuver after it. And I sustained it down to 1, flipped a reversal on 1, went to my turn, did my Kyle ability, pass, he drew. He played Volley This as an action. I played Interrupted by the Anonymous Raw GM, and I'm like, I'll take the count out. I'm going to bed.
A win's a win.
Yeah, 2.5, almost 3 hours, and over 3/4 of it was not playing a card. And I don't fault him, as you said, he's a very intelligent player, and it just wasn't good for either of us to play cards at that point.
Yep. Sometimes that happens. We on the dev team don't necessarily want that to happen, but sometimes
Right?
it does.
Yep.
I played a game once, a non-tournament game, just a regular game as the Lone Warrior. I think I was against Matt Hardy Not Die. And I knew he had some gigantic hybrid reversal in his hand. And I think he might have been Randy Orton, and he had RKO or something like that.
Yeah.
So Lone Warrior's actions, your opponent can't play reversals to your Goldberg actions. And Goldberg's like thrust kick, you can discard it and then put 4 cards on the bottom. So I just
I'm just gonna keep doing this.
I was draw go, and then I just did that. He eventually ran out of cards. It was legitimately 30 turns of neither of us playing a card. Because I had Goldberg's spear and I had something else, and then he had RKO. So I was like, I'm not playing a card. He's not playing a card. So eventually, we got down to the end, and I think he threw RKO as a move, and I, played something. I played anything.
And I didn't want to I eventually got to the point in that game where I knew the outcome that was going to happen. I knew the inevitability that my deck had over his, because he no longer could trigger his ability because he didn't have enough cards. And because his ability shuffles, he can't track where his thrust knee lifts are. Where I can, because mine just go in the same order. That it was the finals, and I didn't want to be if we continue to play this out this exact way, I'm going to win. You don't have an avenue to win. But I don't want to be that guy. I'll let him play, let it play out. But I knew the writing on the wall was once we were in that state, my deck just did that game better.
That's in the last tournament where I played him in the finals and he was rated RKO. I had it was his turn 5 turns in a row, and I was I put in the chat, I was let's just call it here. You win. Yeah, I had 15 cards left, and I was Brock Lesnar. So if I had a turn, I could have done something, but
you weren't going to get another turn.
I wasn't going to get a turn for the rest of the game, and I was rather than waste an hour of both of our lives, you win.
Yep.
Take it. It's
that's kind of been how this. I also have rated RKO as a deck, as you know, and I will probably never play it in a casual environment again. I've played it 3 times casually. It never comes out of the box anymore. But it's basically if that card ever resolves, you just ask your opponent, I will show you how I can continue it every turn. Do you want to just call the game so we don't have to sit here?
Yep.
And being on the receiving end of that feels real bad, but if your opponent offers you that, take it, because you definitely will not get another turn.
Yeah.
If they're built as a never going to stop me deck, you will never get another turn.
And why would you build them any other way?
Exactly.
Kudos to whoever the first person to figure that out is, because it takes a few cards and the right situation, but it can happen at 10 fortitude.
Yep. I'm glad to see kind of my wrapping up overall reactions from the tournament. There was not a lot of cheese. A lot of people decided to go into this tournament and play it for fun. It really should have been, because it wasn't for anything.
It was just a fun anything goes tournament,
Yeah.
Whatever.
And it's nice to see that, because even though you guys have tried to limit the amount of NPE cheese decks, they still do exist. Sure. Nobody is going to disillusion themselves to think that they don't. Yeah. But the player base and community is so great that they want to just basically, everybody I talked to is I pick my favorite superstar and I generally just play that person. Yeah. Whether they're good or bad. We have a new guy who came in, he loves Brian Pillman. He plays Brian Pillman. Whether Brian Pillman is good or not, I have no idea, but he just loves playing Brian Pillman.
Sure does.
So that's really my takeaway from this tournament. I'm excited for the next one, except for that gimmick one. I probably will not play in the every game has a random stipulation.
Yeah,
that just seems.
I'm interested. Uh, I'm I am glad that you won. Not only because, you're a friend of mine, but now I can still become the first two-time Octagon champion.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
so I have that to look forward to.
But now you got to fight me for it.
I know. It gets harder and harder every tournament because I
Sure
think
does.
we've had different winners each tournament so far, and we've had like 6 or so.
That's another cool thing is just the amount of different winners just shows like how strong the game's player base still is.
Yeah. Yep. And the first tournament was Swiss, like this
Mhm.
tournament was. And then I think after that it was all single elimination.
Oh,
Because like, on Octagon, it's
mhm.
not like everyone's in the room together for one day
Right,
at the
right.
local store. We have people, the finals was a guy in Singapore versus a guy in, Pittsburgh.
Yep, yep.
So,
I
it's
played a
the
lot of Singapore players.
yeah, the time different, Mike is in Scotland, so that's
Yep.
5 hours ahead of us. Um, which is a little easier to manage
That was a
than
little easier. Just for me, like
13
where
hours.
the problem with me is I got my vaccine the day before we were supposed to play.
Yeah.
I'm like, I feel so bad.
Hey, whatever. Um, but yeah, this was a fun tournament. I I I played, Dean and Vicky, I guess, in a I wouldn't necessarily call them fun for the opponent.
Yeah.
Um, the first Vicky game or the first Dean game, I had lost the first round and I was like, I gotta win. So
Hmm.
let me use someone that I'll probably win with. And I ended up winning. Um, and then Vicky was kind of the same thing. It's like I've never played against Pat before.
Hmm.
I know he's a good player because I've seen him play a couple of games, and this Vicky deck sounds pretty good.
Yeah.
And it's like it's close enough to matchup proof
Yeah.
that I'd be fine if I did lose as long as it's a good game. Um,
And there are still like it can generate unfun scenarios, but it's still very like you can still combat it. Like
sure.
you can still it still plays the game.
Yeah, like I'm not, if opponent has a deck that's built to be backed by Vicky, I'm gonna have a hard time winning that game.
Hmm.
So it's not like I don't have like all avenues covered of
Right.
here's every way I could lose and here's how I'm not allowing that. It's like, no, I try to kill your hand and I play Vicky moves.
Yeah.
That's it.
And it doesn't play solitaire. Like I think the
Yeah, yeah,
solitaire decks are probably the ones that generally just should be nipped in the bud real quick.
yeah.
Um, but there are still some that exist. Rated RKO is definitely one of them. Um, but yeah, so I think even Dean Malenko and Vicky, as unfun as they can become, aren't solitaire decks. They still allow their opponent to interact with them.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
But yeah, so that is our tournament report. I wanted to have Pat on too, but he guess never saw my message. Um, but anybody out there who's listening, if you didn't get to play in this one, jump in the next one. It's a lot of fun. You meet some really great players, and try to use voice when you can. It makes the games faster.
And we really do have a great community of rodeo players. They're not, there's not hundreds of them, but the ones that are active are all pretty good dudes.
Yeah, yeah. I have had a negative experience with maybe one of them so far, and I
Yeah,
think it was just a bad day. Like I
yeah,
haven't met anybody that I just generally don't like.
yeah.
And hell, I met you and Mike. Granted, I haven't met you guys, but I now like consider you guys friends, and I highly respect you guys as players.
Oh, before we end, I was allowed to give a V12 tease.
Ooh.
It's
Ooh.
I asked the dev team.
Uh
I
huh.
said I'm doing this video. shall I tease something? And they said, sure.
Awesome.
So it's, it's not groundbreaking.
Sure.
But we have our first superstar reveal for V12.
Okay.
And it is Keith Lee.
I wish to bask in the glory.
Well, you will.
Yes.
Come V12, Keith Lee will be hitting the raw deal tables.
Oh, I'm so excited.
So far in testing, pretty good.
All right. Hopefully he has a card called Bask in My Glory. Like it just seems like it should be.
He might.
Yeah, I'm excited. Since I came back and really Keith like picked up, I've been like, I just want to play Keith Lee. Like I asked for him in V11. I didn't get him, but
yeah. He was someone where we knew it's like he's the guy for V12. Like
yeah,
he's the guy.
And I think you even trolled me in V11 because you said so. I was like Keith Lee, and you said something about V11 being limitless.
Oh yeah,
I was like, oh, Keith Lee.
I said the possibilities are limitless.
Yes. I was like, oh, Keith Lee's coming, man.
Nope.
All right, guys. Well, you heard it here. V12. We're at least getting Keith Lee, and yeah. If you guys have any other questions, please leave comments down below. Join to the Discord, reach out to us. Me and Evan are generally always available to talk, and anybody online will definitely be able to help you get set up in virtual if you want to give it a shot. Definitely. So, Evan, I thank you for being on with me, and I appreciate it. And I will catch you guys later.